What's up, YouTube community? I'm really excited to be here with you. Tom, I can't thank you enough. I know I've told you 10 times already, but I can't thank you enough for being here with us. I know that most people watching, listening, kind of will probably have an idea of who you are. But can you briefly just kind of give us the 35,000 foot view of who you are, Mr. Basso?
Okay, well, it would be, and by the way, it's Basso because that's the bass voice in the Italian choir. It's an
There it
Italian
is. I like
musical
it.
term,
I like
and
it.
I am a bass. So yeah, that one thing about me is I do sing and I sing bass.
That's awesome.
Engineer by background, always into math and science, loved chemistry, decided
Yep.
chemical engineering was it for me. Got bored of chemical engineering. It took me about 4 or 5 years, and I realized once you design one heat exchanger, the next one's about the same thing. And it just didn't seem very mentally stimulating or challenging after a while. But I did have a heavy duty background in process engineering, and I was really intrigued by the brain tease of investments. So starting out in the stock market and dealing with investment clubs and friends that would at lunch table kick around ideas, one thing led to another, and the investment club was formed. Eventually another fellow and myself were pretty much running the thing,
Mhm.
and that was successful, and more people started asking us, could you manage our money for us? And little by little, while still working as a chemical engineer, I kept getting a little bit more money under management. I started registering because I started reaching levels where you have to be a registered investment advisor.
Right.
And I started realizing that, I'm seeing money management in the same way that I would see a chemical factory.
Hmm.
So let me explain. In a chemical business or a chemical process, you bring in raw materials. You then process the heck out of it. You add it, you heat it up, you
Right.
add chemicals to it, do
Right.
this, distill it, separate it, do all these different things, and then out goes the rail car or the pipeline or
Sure.
whatever out the door. Well, isn't money management sort of the same thing? I'm bringing in data from all over around the world, and then you're processing it using, in my case, computers, but it might be human beings doing some of that processing manually too. And once you're done processing that information, then you're sending out the product, which is the orders to the brokers, to the desks, the FX trades, whatever you're doing. All of that is, so it's bring it in, process it, bring it out, ship it out.
Yep.
And so I kind of looked at what we were doing and I said, I can make this so much more efficient. And that's what chemical engineers like to do. So
Right.
can I get faster data? Can I get more reliable data? Can I check the data once it gets here? How do I want to process this? How do I want to size my positions? How do I want to, literally generate the order and then get it to whoever needs it to be able to execute that order? How do I get human beings out of the picture? And that led to the whole development of Trendstat and geez, at the peak, I think we had 600 million. I think we traded 30 currency pairs. I think we had 80 futures markets with multiple techniques, multiple strategies. We had, I think we traded around 25 different sector mutual funds at the time, the equivalent of ETFs today. There was a lot going on. We had 10 people and 40 computers and backup facilities and just all this stuff,
Was money
satellite
management
over
ever
my
even in
head.
the radar before that started? Like it seems like it picked up pretty quickly and just kind of grew from the investment club. Had you ever even thought about money management before that?
Nope,
That's crazy.
I was just intrigued. Now,
How long was it between
what
the
what
investment
ended up
club and the?
happening, it really basically got to the point where I started realizing, hey, I am making money on the side from people paying me to manage their money. It doesn't seem like this would be that difficult. So I just went and kind of got committed to doing more of the same. And I reached a point where, with a couple of partners, when we started Kennedy Capital way, way, way back when, uh, I was making as much money in the money management business as I would be making as a chemical engineer. So it was a pretty easy decision to say, to my partners, I said, if you'll be willing to pay me what I'm already making over here, then I'll go and start the office up and go out and, talk to the clients and do, hire a secretary and get the office lease done and all those different things you got to do to run a business. And they said, yeah, all right, we're in. And then shortly thereafter, a second partner joined me and a third partner joined me. And we were just off to the races then. It just went crazy. So
How long was it between when you started that investment club for the small group of people till it grew to Trendstat with the 600 million?
all right, well, Trendstat would have been about 84. So probably start to finish in the ballpark of 7, 8 years.
Wow, it's still pretty quick when you think about it. You know what I mean? Like that's
Still pretty
really,
quick
it's
and
pretty
and
fast.
probably not as doable in today's world, I don't believe.
Why do you
I
think
get
that?
a lot of young traders asking, how do I get started? I'd love to be a money manager. You were
Right,
successful. How did you
right.
do it? And I have to say, anymore, it's getting really, really tough just to start from scratch and become a billion-dollar money manager. You better have a lot of stuff behind you reputation wise. You better have backups. You
Connections.
better have a staff of 4 or 5 people that are all
Yep.
committed to being there and doing that.
Right.
um, you better have capitalization. I mean, I started Trendstat with basically nothing. I had an engineer salary, so I didn't need the money. And when I started out, I was single. I mean, I could live very, very
Sure.
reasonably and keep banking money and putting it in my trading accounts. So
Right.
when it comes around to actually pulling it off, well, all right, so you got to pay $100 or $80 or whatever it is to become a registered investment advisor. You have to take your exam.
Hmm.
You have to do little things, but those don't cost you a lot of money, and you
Right.
can really just operate theoretically out of your home office, which
Yeah.
is what I was doing. Well, nowadays there's people wanting to stop by and they want to see a fancy office. They want to see like people around, and what happens if you die, who takes over and who does what, and how
Right.
automated is this, and how are your automations backed up? There's just so much to it. They really want a business that's in good shape and that they can rely on. And I basically started up out of what you'd call a garage or a basement type of operation and grew it into a huge firm. But it, I'm not sure how many people would
Could
go
do
for
that
that
today.
today.
It's
Yeah,
tough. What do you
it's
think
tough.
if if someone was to try to go that route now and they were trying, like, because there was a couple guys that I put out questions to and I said, what do you want me to ask Tom? Of course, like you just said, most of them said, ask him how much money I need to initially fund, to get started and start taking money and start managing money. And I was, I knew that that would come up in our conversation. Do you think that those guys are better off, in your opinion, going more of the route of how you kind of run your business now, kind of similar to what I do as well, where it's more, like you said, a home office thing? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but right now it's you and your wife. You guys, you're just managing accounts for you guys, and that's it, right?
That's it.
Yep.
We have no clients. I have no registration. I have no, deep pocket legal liability that I had
Right.
when I was a money manager, and somebody could say, sue you for $1 million or something. Nowadays,
Crazy.
it's my life's a lot easier. And I would say to the young guys starting out, especially those with good careers, let's say, like, give me myself as an example.
Sure.
Say you're a chemical engineer, starting chemical engineering salaries from my alma mater, Clarkson University. I think they said that they're getting around 95,000 a year
That
starting
was going to be my
salaries for a
guess.
chemical
Yep.
engineer.
Yep.
All right, so 95, yeah, you can probably, especially if you're single and you keep your
You'll be
expenses
all right.
down, you can be banking some of that. And even if you have some college debt,
Yep.
you're going to be able to get through that fairly quickly. At that point, if you could start socking it into an account and build up, let's say, 50 to 100,000, something like that, that could be just a couple of years of working hard and scrimping a little bit and buying the used car instead of the flashy car, and maybe not buying a house right away, and just being conservative. And I think what you end up with then is the experience to be able to trade and to be able to hopefully create a second source of income off of that portfolio. So you've got your engineering salary and you've got your portfolio generating some, ongoing return on investment, hopefully.
Right.
As that portfolio continues to get larger, both from return on investment and you continuing to sock away into it, at the same time that maybe the engineering thing is also doing a 401k for you and you're sucking that away too.
You've got all these different
Pretty
things
soon
going.
now you got a bunch of different return stream potentials going on. And you reach a point where you say, I'm making enough off my portfolio. I don't need my engineering salary anymore.
Right.
And that's the easy decision to just retire and go over and manage it full time. To put pressure on yourself and say, like some guys do, all right, I've got 50,000. I want to quit my engineering job and just trade full time.
It's so hard.
Holy, I mean, you're talking, you do the math. You got 50,000, you're trying to generate 95,000, or maybe you need 50. You got to do 100% a year and you're not even increasing your capital and you got to pay taxes. And
it's so hard,
man,
so hard.
I wouldn't want to take that stress on.
I've heard you say before that a lot of the issues that new traders face, especially in this space, it's that they're undercapitalized, right? Where they just don't come into the game with enough money. And I feel like you guys like you and me, I'm so glad that we are doing this video and they get to hear you say that, because it's kind of the message that I've been pushing, because I've lived that. I was that guy 5 years ago who came in and tried to just say, all right, I've got a little bit of money saved up from a business that I was a DJ back in the day. That was my hustle. So I had some money saved up. I thought I was going to be able to just jump in and start trading, and I was wrong. And I had to eat it. And it took me years to dig back out and build a business that was then able to put me in the position that I'm in now. Sure. So I feel like hearing someone like you say that it's important to not only trade well and grow the trading account, but also sock your extra money into. I like the way you say it, sock the extra money into the account to get it as large as possible. Get it as big as you can, as quick as you can.
I had some good luck on timing. When I started out, I was just in stocks, and we caught a little bull market in the 70s that was nice after the 73, 74 bear market. So that perked up my portfolio a little bit. I was able to put a down payment on a custom home out in the woods that I designed myself out in southwest of St. Louis at the time. And at the same time, I was able to stake a futures trading account that literally took me 4 years to get to break even.
Wow.
The first year I took losses. Next year I took less losses. The next year I took less losses. Fourth year I broke even. And from that point on, I've been profitable. So it's been nice. But, that was a long learning curve for me. I didn't have any enjoytheride.world website to go
guidance,
to and,
no
read books, or I was on my own. And it was, basically just asking questions of myself and trying to figure it out.
That's what I was going to say. Who did you learn from? Like, who were your mentors in that situation?
I jokingly say that my mentor has always been my perfect self, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
In other words, I fully aware of my shortcomings and where I don't have a knowledge, or where I tend to get emotional, or whatever it is as a human being that I have. I'm not perfect, but you could create a sort of perfect self if you wish. And it would never have any of these flaws. And you can always try to think then, what would the perfect self do? And how do I get myself a little closer to that level? And I think that helped motivate me to get better all the time. There was nobody really convenient. St. Louis, where I grew up as an engineer in the early years, did not have anybody that I respected that was a big futures trader or anything. Anybody I knew, it wasn't in those circles. I was just, just an engineer, grinding out a personal portfolio. So there just wasn't anybody like that. So
were you always hungry for that?
I had to create one.
But that makes sense to me, because I've heard other people say that, like, sometimes your biggest competition in trading has to be yourself, because every day we show up and it's really, as much as we think it's us versus the market, it's really us versus ourselves yesterday. So all I'm trying to do is be a better version of who I was yesterday. Have you always, I'm just curious, like, Was that something you had to learn in trading, like this, the constant self-discovery, or were you already in that headspace coming into trading from something previous?
I was in that headspace from a couple different things. Lack of ability to speak publicly. In high
Hmm.
school, senior year of high school, I got up in front of a bunch of friends. I mean, basically, these are people I grew up through elementary
Sure.
school, junior high school.
Sure.
I have to do a book report in English class, and I am trembling. I am
Really?
just absolutely distraught. My hands are
Huh.
shaking, everything. I got home that night and I replayed sort of how the day went. And I said, Tom, that was pretty stupid. I mean, all these people, you play games with them out in the ball field and whatever. What are you, you're getting up in front of them and talking about a stupid
Right.
book that you
Right.
really did read. You
Right.
actually understand what you're talking about. There's no reason for you to be nervous about this. And that
Right.
started this process that I went through for the rest of high school. As I got into college, what was really material was the basketball. I
Hmm.
We had a floor that happened to be in first place, but out of the 50 guys on the floor, a lot of the key guys got whisked away to fraternities, and I was going to stay in the dorms. And I was, 6'3", so I'm one of the taller guys on the floor. Hey, have you ever played basketball before? No. Would you like to? Because we only got like one person left on the team, but we're in first place. It's a shame to waste that. So four of us guys got together, and we had two guards that were 6 foot, and we found another guy that was already there, was 6'2", and we found another 6'3" guy down the other end of the hall, and we threw together this team. And it was hilarious, but because we always tried to get better. To answer your question about here's where we are right now, we're in first place. And we've got to deal with this team coming up, and how do we try to be the best that we can be today, knowing that we can get better. But by the time we were seniors and had played together for 5 straight years and just stayed in the dorms together, and we even housed in the same suite together, the two guards were on the other side of the suite, and i
That's
had
cool. That's
I
cool.
had one of the forwards with me. I was the center, and then one of the other forwards was down the hall. By the time we got done, people didn't even want to play us. And
Because you were
we
so
would
good.
blow teams out 80-40. I
Oh
mean, it
man.
was just insane. We were fast break. Everybody was gassed by the end of the game. Fourth quarter, we always would just blow the teams away. They couldn't keep up with us. They were dead tired.
That's
And
interesting.
so it was a process of getting better and a little better and a little better.
Yeah.
So when you translate that to trading, you say, okay, I know how to trade futures. I know how to trade commodity options. I know how to trade ETFs. I know how to trade FX. What financial puzzle am I trying to solve, and how do I get better at trying to solve it? So my puzzle now is very different from what my puzzle was trying to solve when I'm managing other people's money.
Right.
I'm trying to solve their puzzle. Now I can say to myself, no, I'm retired. I don't need to do that. I want to make it simple. I want to be able to go play golf. I want to be able to go take a vacation next week up to Utah and play a little golf and have some cool temps.
Definitely.
Um, so the puzzle is completely different. It's more important for me to be able to do 20 minutes a day while on a road trip
Right.
and then continue to enjoy my road trip than it is to try to push the envelope and do 100%
Makes
return,
sense.
because
Makes
100%
sense.
return doesn't change my life.
No.
It doesn't change my life at all. I
Right.
have enough money to live off of. I have a gorgeous lifestyle. Two houses, one in the mountains and one in Scottsdale, which is one of my favorite places in the world to be. And
Different goals.
life's good. I just don't want to screw it up,
Right.
And so it's a different motivation, and you still can try to get better at it though. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting here today, this morning. I actually did 3 day trades today, ended up with some profits out of it. I'm testing it out manually so that we can try to automate it going forward eventually. And that'll be something I'll add to the kind of the quiver of arrows, and be able to pick up shorter term swings to try to diversify myself by time period.
Is
So
Is short term bigger for you right now than it ever has been? I know you're a traditional, everyone knows you as a trend following trader, but are you more short term than long term right now?
No, I would say hmm, I would say I'm, I would rate it as probably half very long term, like in the 50 days and beyond range, about half or 45%, let's say, intermediate term, and let's call that 21 days area. And then I would say the rest of it is either a 9-day short-term trading index program I do, or
Hmm.
sometimes day trading,
Yeah.
which I do
Good to know.
manually right now. I'm doing it manually just to log the trades in, develop sort of the strategies. I mean, these days I have, when I'm in the office like I was today, most of the day, I have 3 screens, so I can throw my day trading over to my left, and I can
Right.
be looking and having an interview with you, straight ahead, and over here
Right.
I could use for whatever else, like reference material.
Sure.
And it it makes it pretty easy to operate because I pretty much look at 5-day bars. I don't want to get into the tick by tick stuff. That's ridiculous. I would never get anything done. But
Right.
I was working on a PowerPoint presentation for our next webinar while I was day trading. I did, I think, 3 day trades, and one was slightly profitable, uh, almost a break even, just slightly profitable. One was a loss, and one was a big winner.
Nice.
And so I was up nicely for the day on the day trading. So I log that in and I keep it in my mind, and I know the algorithm that I need to create to replicate a computer doing what I just did.
Sure.
So
So you're
as
trying
I
to automate
modify,
more now than ever before. I was going to ask
I
you, because
am.
was
I'm working.
automation not really a
Working.
thing during Trendstat? Because it was still kind
No,
of new then.
automation's always been Tom being lazy. Tom being very energetic but very lazy. I personally uh, take all of human endeavor, and
Okay.
I see it in two. I see it in 2 camps. One camp is the stuff that you could teach a robot to do, or a monkey, or something, a trained dog, like taking a chart and looking at it and doing the same thing over and over and over. And, like after about the 1,000th day of doing that, you're so sick and tired of doing it that your brain just turns off, and then you make mistakes because you're so bored. I would rather spend my energy building a program to have a computer read that data, do the same exact decision making I would have done as a human being, and do all that heavy lifting for me. And I'll just
Makes
start
sense.
the button and hit the button that sends it to the brokers or whatever. That seems so much more fun because now it allows me as the human being to do what we do best, which is to create, to be artistic, to be.
Hmm.
That's stuff that you can't, even with artificial intelligence, you can't, create the great symphonies of the world or a beautiful piece of art. Those, or a program, to
Sure.
create the program that does all the things that I want to do. That takes creative human endeavor. That is what human beings would prefer to spend their days doing, not
That's a really
grinding
good
out
way to look at it.
menial tasks over and over again. So basically, that's how this whole happened. Automation became me putting myself out of work.
Yeah.
Basically saying, I don't
Yeah.
want to just continue to do this mindless stuff over and over again. I want somebody else to do all that crunching so that I don't get so bored.
Has
I
anyone
get bored
ever,
easily.
I do too. I think that there might be something that is in common maybe with our trader personality types. Just
Yeah,
not necessarily that I get bored, but I think I describe it as like I get tired of things. I'm like, I could still do it if I had to, but I would rather. So I
right.
definitely understand that. And the way you described the automation being something that stems from like us as humans needing to create, I think almost makes me more interested to learn about automation myself, because like I've always loved the idea of trading. But when you describe
Yeah,
it that way, it's almost like as a human, we know, and I'm sure you know, out of everybody that you've worked with and traded with for all your years, it's a
Yeah.
lot of the things in trading, we almost have to break our DNA and what us as humans would naturally want to do. You can't bring that
Hmm.
to trading. So it's almost like and you know this, by automating, you take that part of it out and just let the humans generate the ideas and that. And I think that's a really
Yeah.
interesting way to look at it.
In some ways, you almost make it difficult to not follow your strategy, because the strategy, you've got so many things going on, so much data to process, and you sit there and think, if I had to do that by hand and try to make a decision
Right.
outside the framework that I've told the computer to do, it's almost like a hassle to do it. So it
Yeah.
almost pushes you towards keeping with your strategy and doing doing what you're supposed to be doing, and not varying it, which does,
Right.
you know, it's not perfect, because you as a human being could always step in and turn that program off, or
Sure.
to override
Sure.
it. You could say, oh, the market just doesn't look good, a
Right.
COVID crash.
Right.
We've gone down the last 5 straight days. I am not going to get involved in this.
Right.
There was professional money managers out there. I think it was Eric Crittenton, who you interviewed a month or two ago, who I know very well from Phoenix. He's been a friend for years, decades actually. Eric was saying that he knows of several CTAs, commodity trading advisors, that literally were trend followers and should have slayed the COVID crash, and instead stepped in and overrode their systems and said, we're not going to trade this. We're just
Really?
going to sit in cash. And so they
Why do you think
didn't
that is?
really
Why did they step
clean
in?
up. Why? They were just psychologically not
Scared?
comfortable with what was going on.
Is that the same?
You
So
know,
like when you look at that decision, would that be the same as like everybody's been talking about Buffett dumping the airlines at the bottom? Would that be the same thing, or is there a different reasoning in that? I know he's not automating that, but
well,
in the same
Buffett's
sense,
more of,
getting scared and just getting out of an investment.
yeah, I don't know that Buffett's scared. I think Buffett would probably look at it like the world's changed quite a bit, and he sees the behavioral change as not coming back to normalcy for airlines for maybe several years. So there's no
Right.
point in owning them now, or something along those
Maybe.
lines. He's more
That's
of a
fair.
fundamentalist. And remember, in Warren's case, I am dealing with millions and he is dealing with billions.
Billions. So it's
It's a
different.
whole different,
Yeah.
difficult problem to move that kind
100%.
of money. In some ways, people, the smaller traders, think that the big guys have all the advantage.
No,
In
it's
Buffett's
I mean,
case,
it feel like it's hard. It's so hard to move that much money. You know what I
very
mean?
hard.
And then everybody's looking at you too when you're those guys.
Exactly.
And
Everybody is.
and that's the scary thing too. So like this is an interesting point. Like as I put myself out on social media and as I do gain a little bit more of traction and people are looking, my personality does get a little timid from it, because as I am making more money, I don't necessarily want more people looking at me. That's just my perspective of it. Like, cause I've always been the kind of guy that's like, I want to just get enough to live the kind of lifestyle as you do with Riley
Yeah,
and my family that makes us happy. I don't need to be
sure.
Cristiano Ronaldo of trading. You know what I'm saying? I don't need to be Tom Cruise of trading. So it's like you have to kind of walk this fine line. But I wanted to
Yeah.
ask you something that you reminded me. Has anyone ever asked you to define a trading edge? And could you share with us like your input on what a trading edge is?
For me, a trading edge is anything that within your, what I'll call it, inventory of view.
Okay.
I'll call it like a psychological or a personal inventory. And the personal
Okay.
inventory could cover things like your mental awareness, your self-confidence, your self-esteem levels, your ability to keep yourself balanced. All of those things would be in that area. There's other personal inventory items like I have computer skills. I was an engineer, so I could program in the early
Sure.
some of the programming I'm seeing done today, I'm clearly not at that level. And some of the cloud stuff I can barely understand. So
Really.
I'm hanging in there, but I try to get people to help me when I need it. But the point I'm making is each person out there that becomes into the trading world has a knowledge of certain markets, a lack of knowledge of others, a different risk level, a different amount of capital, a different amount of time they can spend on the process, a different level of math and computer skills, different list of contacts that you personally know that you could go and ask a question for. Like, you know me, you could pick up the phone or you could send me an email and I would answer your question. And
Sure.
so that's a resource you have. That's
Sure.
part of your inventory. When you package that entire collection of everything from how your strategy works and whether or not it has its own personal edge in the strategy, or whether it's your ability to be balanced all the time, or your ability to tolerate more risk than the next guy, all of that together becomes your collective edge, I believe. Edge to me is a little different than what typically systems traders talk about. This thing has a X%
Sure.
reliability
Sure.
on the positive side, and
Right. Right.
therefore
Right.
my edge is X%. I take that with a grain of salt, because history and the future are always
Right.
different, as the old
I agree with you.
disclaimer says. And so I don't think of that as the edge. I think of it as the collective structure around each individual, and what
Right.
they can bring, what they can improve within themselves, or their structure, or their inventory, so that they have what they need to pull it off.
And I feel like you said, strategy goes into that. Like, so the way that you're
It's
executing, that's just a piece of it. The edge is more
it's
than
a
that. And
piece of it.
I like that you mentioned, like, even resources, contacts, like that is a really important piece of the edge that I feel like a lot of people aren't thinking about, because like that is something to, when you are having a down period or you are struggling, or even when you're riding a high. I find it
Yeah.
too, like when I see guys winning consist 4 or 5, they ride a high, like they're on a 30-foot wave and they're on top and they're living, you have to
Yeah.
almost use the resources in that situation, just as when they're on a 30-day losing streak,
To
to bring them
drag you
up.
back.
Exactly. So you got to find, but that's your resources. So it's part of your edge. And this is a good one for you. How important is community to you? Because you had the guys at Trendstat, you had the guys at your investment club. It seems like you were never on your own until now. Almost. It
Well,
seems like now it's like kind of you, but you also have the
yeah,
website now. So now you're
my
creating content
license
for the website.
now my life's insane in terms of lack of I get emails from around the world, and
Right.
direct messages on
I'm
Twitter,
sure.
and every
I'm
morning
sure.
I have a half an hour worth of responses to make, but it goes pretty quickly, and I enjoy doing it. I would say, yeah, I have not been alone. I mean, Trendstat, we had people there. In the end, because I was the head of Trendstat, the final decision always would end up being
On your
mine to
shoulders.
say,
Yeah.
let's work on this research project instead of that one, and let's close down this strategy because it's clearly not doing what we had designed it to do. Something's wrong. Let's go do some research, and we'll try to fire it up again. Lots of business decisions that have to be made. So it's yeah, I didn't really have a team that collectively made all that. I feel like I've had to be a fairly strong loner that is in the middle of a huge population.
You're the decision
A
maker.
good example, if you've ever been to New York City and walked down Wall Street or something, there's people all around you, but you're really by yourself.
Right. Right.
I get that feeling whenever I'm in New York City that it's kind of one of the lonelier places in the world, because even though there's millions of people everywhere, nobody
No
ever
one's
talks to each
talking.
other.
100%.
And if they
It's
do,
weird.
they're probably telling you to get out of the way or
Right.
something.
Right. Right.
They're
Right.
not exactly friendly.
Exactly.
But
So you feel
yeah,
like you've been a loner in the sense that you were still the decision maker. You were still the one that's pulling the trigger, clicking the button. But even at that time, did you ever find a sense of like, I'm sure you wouldn't have hired the people to sit with you at Trendstat if you didn't think they were bringing you value in the decisions and the
oh yeah.
conversations that you were having.
Well,
You know what I mean?
hey, I traveled all over the world. My clients were all over the world. I had to go see them. Somebody's got to
So
stay
you're
at home and
connected.
hit the buttons and
Of
start the
course.
computer programming.
Of course. How
Yeah.
did you get the clients all over the world? I heard you mention that before, but I didn't find any detail on it. Like you said you were traveling, but where were you traveling and what was that about?
We had clients in Europe. We had, it was largely bank centers, largely.
Got
So
it.
things like
Singapore.
Credit Agricole and some of the London banks and Royal Bank of Canada and Montreal and
Anything in Asia too?
Chase Manhattan, Asia. I went to Hong Kong a few times,
Nice.
Tokyo once,
Where's your favorite place that
um,
you've traveled out of all of these cool business trips?
Scottsdale.
Really? So that's why you
Yeah,
settled there.
that's why I'm here.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. What about
Arizona
Scottsdale?
is lovely. Arizona's lovely. It's I like the dry climate.
Yeah.
When I go east, I come down to Florida where you are.
Mm,
It almost feels to me like I'm having a hard time breathing.
it
There's so
is
much
thick.
humidity in the air. My
Hmm.
poor lungs are saying, "Well, let's separate the water from the oxygen." And it seems like I have to breathe harder to just get oxygen into my system.
You need a tank.
Arizona, especially when it's dry, oh, it's so
It's
easy.
nice. I see. I got to come experience it. So I wanted to also kind of get into some more of the current stuff because you kind of mentioned, now you're trading with just your accounts, just running it from home, doing a lot of these video calls, keeping yourself busy, giving us the time,
Hmm.
which we appreciate. What do you
Yeah,
think about some of the other current stuff that's going on? I mean, you see more automation, I think, now than ever. But what about
yeah.
give me your input specifically about? I wanted to ask you cryptocurrency first. Are you a believer long term? Are you a trader of it in the midterm? What are your thoughts on it?
No, cryptos to me are an interesting idea that I think sooner or later will find their place in society. Uh, I still think, despite the fact that there's a lot of it going on and there's a lot of people being involved in it, and even
Yep.
some of like the Paul Tudor Jones say they buy some of
Yep.
it.
Yep.
I still think it's not quite ready for prime time until it becomes, in my mind, a something that my wife will pull out a card and use Bitcoin for the grocery store,
Right.
which I just don't see happening yet. There's too much volatility in the market. There's For the normal person with
It's hard to
5,000
use
or
kind of
less to their
still.
name in
Yep.
liquid assets, I just don't see it becoming mainstream yet.
Yep.
And so there's fits and starts and little panic sell-offs, and all of that tends to create lessons that are learned, and people get better at it, and the infrastructure continues to grow, and there's more people to get involved. And as that reaches an economy of scale, I think that it'll be a possibility. For me in retirement, I don't want to sit there and watch Bitcoin go up and down 24 hours a day. I have
Sure.
better things to do with my time. And unlike an exchange where I could say put in a futures trade, put a stop order on silver
Right.
and let it run, and
Right.
I got to stop, I'm moving up behind it.
Right.
That's pretty easy for me to do in 20 minutes a day. Having
Right.
Bitcoin, do they have stops in Bitcoin? I don't think they do.
It
I've
depends
never
on your
heard of them.
broker, but no one's trading it the way that you're
Right.
describing it. You know what I mean? The guys that are
Yeah.
trading it right now, you can't even use, as far as I know, you can't even get an actual regulated broker to place those trades with. They're all with unregulated brokers that could shut down and take your money in a second.
Yeah, and then the money's gone, and then I'm retired. I don't want to go back to work. I just don't. I just don't see.
Tom, that would make
I
a
just don't.
great, that would make like the most sad ending to a beautiful life story that you built. Like you put all the money into Bitcoin
Exactly.
and then Tom ends up at like the greeter at Walmart, Tom. You know what I mean? That would be terrible. That's not the direction we're going. Tom needs to be at the
Well,
golf course.
I like people. I'd be okay as a greeter, but I probably wouldn't. I probably wouldn't make as much money as I
You
do
would
now.
not, exactly. And like that's what it always comes back to is what we like, no matter what we talk about, crypto or your previous, experiences, it's always your lifestyle now. What
Yeah.
At what point did you make like a decision that, okay, nothing is coming over this? And was it family or was it like your own personal wants?
It was just lifestyle. It was family and the ability to enjoy golf, working out, to do some of the things that I never had a chance to do. Like when I was traveling all the time, and my wife at the time said, you can't dance. And I said, well, I have a good friend up here in the mountains that was on American Bandstand
That's
back
cool.
in the day in
That's
Philadelphia
cool.
where he grew up. And I said, he's not a rocket scientist. If he can dance, I should be able to dance. But I'm never in town because I'm on a plane all the time,
Right.
but every other week. And so you miss dance lessons. You can't, it's tough. So as soon as I retired, I signed up and took lots and lots of dance
That's
lessons. And
awesome.
now my wife and I are accomplished Arizona two-step dancers. We're
That's
accomplished
awesome.
swing dancers.
That's pretty
And it's,
cool.
it's part exercise, part fun, hanging out with other people. It's a social aspect, but that's a skill that I never had until I retired. And
Right.
I just think it's a total lifestyle thing where you want to create balance between what you do every day. And this might apply if you're a doctor or a lawyer or any other
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
profession.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, okay. So typically, people work 8, 9 hours a day on their job, whatever that is. But then there's, there's a family, there's the kids growing up, there's the spouse, there's the extended family, the moms and dads, the uncles and aunts, the cousins, the get-togethers for holidays. That's all a part of life, and it
Right.
all takes time.
Right.
Well, you can work so many hours, you got to sleep sometime, you got to
Right.
eat sometime. You probably should be trying to stay in shape because your health is, if you don't have that, you got nothing else.
Nothing. Yep.
You're gone, and none of the other stuff matters. So as you look at a 24-hour a day pie, or extend that to a whole year pie, and ask yourself all the different pieces that get pulled and sometimes conflict with each other. And
Mm-hmm.
people sometimes have a very tough balance, trying to find that balance. I mean, they
Right.
have a difficult time trying to say, okay, this is enough work for today. It's gone now. I'm done. I'm going to go home and I'm going to cook a fabulous meal because I just feel in the mood to go in the kitchen and create some wonderful Italian dish because I like cooking too. So here I sing, I dance, I cook. I am Chef Tommaso on Genius Kitchen. If anybody
That's pretty
cares, you can
awesome.
follow me there. All my
That's
personal
awesome.
recipes. Um, I trade.
So
I
it's
went
like
to
when you
aqua class this
found,
morning.
when you like let go of all the other stuff, it seems like you found who you actually were. Like this person
Yeah,
who had all these different skills. You know what I mean?
right. I think a lot of people I find when they retire, sadly, identify with their career.
Hmm.
They retire and they say, I was a CPA.
Sure.
And they're lost in retirement because they viewed themselves as CPAs, not
Right.
human beings with the
Right.
ability to create and to, we had a situation in the condo in Scottsdale that we had a triple window over top of a queen size guest bed, and it was facing west, and there was no ability in the middle window to get something to cover the window. So yeah, we could have run electricity in, and we could have put some power,
Mm-hmm.
blinds and stuff, and I could afford it and all that. But I
Mm-hmm.
thought, it would be fun to do. I'm just going to buy 3 canvases. I'm going to put them up on the garage wall, and I'm going to create a scene of a desert spring in oil.
That's
So I
cool.
bought acrylic paint. Took me over a year to do it, but I created this triptych.
That's
Each
awesome.
one of these canvases is custom made to fit right over the window and
Wow.
completely black out the window. So now our guests get beautiful shady conditions for sleeping.
That's
And when
so
they walk
awesome.
into the room, they get this beautiful picture of a desert spring with the flowers and the cactus in bloom. And it's a blustery day. There's a little bit of blue gray in the
That's
sky, and
awesome.
the McDowell Mountains are off in the distance. And,
So you cook, you paint, you dance, you sing. It's like, why did you even get into trading? You should be on Dancing with the Stars, and you know what I mean, or something like that, Tom. It's interesting
I
too,
would
but it's
need to
like
be a bigger star. I
it's
could be on Dancing with the Stars. I have to say, at almost 68 years old in two
oh, I don't
weeks,
doubt you.
I might be a little winded on some of those like sambas and things. I don't know.
The interesting thing that like it's like you have so many skills, but it's like it is just who you are. But
Hmm.
it just needed to be opened up. So I wanted to ask you, can you define retirement? Because for someone like me, I think it's a hard picture to paint. I'm 25. I, over the last 3 years, have been able to complete, like, I'm trying every day to get better at it, but just shut off that survival switch that I used to have on, where I was just, trying to make enough money to actually get by. Just now, over the, like I said, 3 years or so, we have enough money to get to the point where we can afford more of what we want, have
Mhm.
plenty of money in savings and things like that.
Sure.
So the retirement picture is like a tough thing to paint, especially when I love trading. And look, you're retired and you're still trading. I don't see myself ever stopping the
Right.
trading. You know what I mean?
No,
So
it's
what is
fun. It's,
retirement to you?
retirement could be like this morning doing the day trading and trying to solve that interesting new puzzle that I've discovered that I want to learn more about, or working a crossword puzzle. It's just two different puzzles. Think
Sure.
of it that way. Think of it as, like I had Aquafit this morning. My right shoulder was a little, as you get older, I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if it's arthritis or the tendons that I've torn golfing poorly or whatever. Uh, you know, you kind of say to yourself, maybe if I go to Aquafit and I do some work on these shoulders, I'll strengthen them and smooth them out a little bit. So I guess retirement to me is to take the view of that entire year ahead and ask yourself what types of things would really kind of turn you on and really be fun to do. Realizing that part of your responsibility, in my case, about 20 minutes a day minimum, is spent doing trading.
Sure.
And, hey, a certain X amount of hours a year I spent doing my taxes. X amount a year I got to eat, I got to
Right.
sleep, I got,
Right.
but you get to decide what that mix is. That's
Right.
what retirement is to me.
When do you think people are like, as investors or traders, you mentioned before, like, as you start making more money from your investments and from your trading
Mhm.
at the day job, everybody has a personal threshold depending on their debt and depending on how much money
Oh, yeah.
saving. It's all different. But is there a number that you've thrown out to people where you're like, you should have X amount, or is it so different for everybody? It's hard to give that
You
number because I
know,
can
if you
never,
lived if you lived in San Francisco, it'd be a
you
different
would need
number
so
than
much
if you
more. That's
lived
what I
in
said.
Payson.
Exactly. Yep.
There and some people, I mean, the former president of Trendstat worked for me.
Yeah.
Great friend, Peter Mothy. He
Yeah.
loved racing cars. Doing closed track,
That's cool.
uh, time trials.
Yeah.
And that's a very you go out a couple times and you go through a couple $1,000s worth of tires on those
Sure.
turns and braking
Sure.
and everything. So, yeah, it gets to be pretty expensive. So it
Right.
just depends on what your hobbies are.
Right.
If you're retire on a trout stream someplace and you just like going out for a few hours a day and getting the fly wet, that's not going to cost you a lot of money.
Right. So it's
Um,
just, it
it,
really depends on the lifestyle that you want to live.
well, and I've got two country clubs. I got one in the mountains and I got one in the valley. So I got two
Right.
country club bills, stuff like that.
Right. So it really
Uh,
just depends on the life that you want to
it
live.
really depends on so many variables. It's hard to come up with a single number.
Do you think I mean, is it fair to say that it's very difficult to start trading and not add money, going back to what we said, to not add money to account that's less than 50K or 100K? Because that's kind of the threshold that I've seemed to give people
Right.
as well.
I think in that ballpark you could get started and get some
Yeah.
experience and basically trade small and hopefully not make too many mistakes that would kill you or anything.
Right. Right.
But beyond that, I think it's just keep dumping money in, keep hoping that the returns pile up, and the combination of both of those. Now all of a sudden you're trading 100 or 200 or 300, and now you're off to the races because now you're diversified across more markets and you're
Right.
getting better risk controls kicking in, and you're experienced now because you've gone through that startup and you're becoming seasoned. So it's more of the same every day. You're kind of getting in the flow,
Right.
and then you can take that up into the millions, and
Sure.
then you can
Do you
retire comfortably and do what you want.
has your I correct me if I'm wrong, heard you say before that you're risking no more than 1% per
Mhm.
trade. Has that always been your risk profile, so to speak, or was it less when you were, trading a smaller amount of
When I
money
was
and
at
then as you trade?
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I was at Trendstat, I remember my job was managing clients' money, not mine.
Right.
So my perception of typical client out there that I talked to was that somewhere in the 0.7, 0.6, 0.7% range on risk per position was a lot easier on the client. So 1% was actually a little bit higher risk.
That's what I was going to say. It's a little
And
higher. Yeah.
because for me, I'm more risk tolerant because I know what I'm doing. I'm experienced. I've got the money to be able to do it.
Right.
It makes more sense for me to be at 1% now because the puzzle I'm trying to solve is just my retirement.
Right.
So intra trade, as you continue in the trade and you have a position go your direction, I'll let it get up to 2.5%.
Got it.
Because I figure the trade's going my way, the trend's my friend, the risk may be getting a little bigger, but I need to give that, because the market starts moving faster, I need to give it a little bit of extra room so that I don't just get taken out arbitrarily.
Got it.
So on a profitable trade, I can take up to about 2.5%. It would
And
be my number.
in that situation, because I'm just going off previous interviews, you don't really add to winning positions. So what you'll do there is move the stop loss to give it a little more wiggle room, is what you're saying.
Yep, exactly right. I move the stop loss as much as I can justify. But to me, it's all a matter of noise and information. Noise is this band that you see every day, especially if you look at an intraday chart, where the market goes up and it goes down and goes up and down and it breaks out and then false breakout goes back the other way, and just that's all normal buyers and sellers battling for the position. I likened it to Waterloo days where you have Wellington and Napoleon up on the hills watching their armies down in the valley, and the one side's over here and the other side's over there, and the battle is joined, and they're looking. The generals are watching the line go forward or backward, and it's kind of like which way it's going is who's winning the battle that little moment.
Right.
And that's kind of the way the buying and selling happens in the market. Sellers have the upper hand and prices decline a little bit. Buyers have the upper hand. They push the sellers aside and say, get out of my way, we're going up.
Sure.
And when you get those types of battles going on, you need to ignore all the nonsense and then decide, wait a second, now at this point, it looks like the buyers are definitely cleaning clock, and this is no longer noise. This is information. I got to, buy it. I got to be on that trend. So to me, that's kind of what it comes down to, is separating the information from the noise.
Are you still using a lot of technical analysis to separate?
Well, it depends on how you define technical analysis. I don't sit there with a chart pattern and look for head and shoulders and all that stuff. I mostly just take data and say, okay, here's the normal movement. Think of a Bollinger Band, for instance, where you have a standard deviation around a moving average.
Sure.
So you say, this is the average price that we're in right now, and one standard deviation, which would include 2/3 of all of the price excursions from there, up and down, those would be the high side of the noise range and the low side of the noise range. Anything in between that, I want to ignore.
Right.
Here, I don't care. If it gets above here, I want to buy. If it gets below there, I want to sell. But in here, I don't really care. That's just what the market does all the time, and I don't want to make any trades at all.
And I've heard
that's the job, is separating noise from information.
They're the Kettler bands. Is that how you say them?
Keltner.
Where did you? I've never heard of anybody ever use them before. Where did you originally learn about them?
I just went on my broker platform one day and I was intrigued. So I just started at the A's and worked my way
playing.
down.
That's it.
I said, what is this? And how would I ever use this? And I just tried they had the math. So I'd kick over to the math and I'd look at the formula and I'd say, I see, what advantage or disadvantage would that have in the marketplace? And I would just kind of let my mind wander, and then I'd go on to the next one, and I bring it up on the screen with, say, an SPY or some kind of a instrument, and I would just start putting these indicators on the screen and just seeing how they do what they do. It was just an educational process, and when I got to the Keltners, I thought, this makes some sense, because thing I liked about it is a lot of people, for instance, set stops at 5% or 2% or
Right.
3% or
Right.
7%. They pick a number and they lock into it. And I'm happy for the discipline involved in that. That's a good thing. But basically, if you're in the middle of the COVID crash and you're putting 3% stops behind a short sale position during the COVID crash, you're probably going to be out of there, that same day,
Right.
because the market is moving up and
Up and
down
down like crazy.
multiple
The volatility,
percentages.
right? The volatility is crazy.
So normal noise in that type of market is very, very wide. But then if you then in the time before that, if you look just before the COVID crash happened, if you look at all the price charts, they're all like this.
Yep.
They're topping out and they're going very, very, very skinny. Noise is this big during that period, and it's this big during the COVID.
Yep.
So you have a totally different situation. And the thing I like about Keltner's is it uses the average true range, which is a measure of volatility, and then a multiple of that on either side of the moving average. And that gives so the range is getting bigger during high volatility,
Makes sense. Yeah.
getting smaller
Smaller
during
during
low
low.
volatility,
Yep.
which then is adjusting for the noise. I prefer indicators that constantly adjust with the conditions. It just seems like logically they would be more robust over a long period of time.
Absolutely. With, I believe I was listening to an interview with you. It was an older one, and you had mentioned, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, a silver trade that was famous. Can
Yeah,
you?
that
Because
was
I mean,
the silver trade was in the Market Wizards chapter. That's where you
that's what it
read it
was.
probably.
That's what it was. Yep.
Yeah, Jack asked me about that, Schwager, and he,
Wait. Before you answer this, what's he
yeah,
like? I'm just interested. What's he like?
he's an overcaffeinated New Yorker,
That is
is
not
the
what
way
I
I
would have
would
expected
describe
you to
him.
say.
And
That's awesome.
he would probably agree with me. Maybe I don't know if he
That's
is
pretty
these
funny.
days because he was out at Martha's Vineyard for a while. He may have chilled out a little bit. I heard he moved back to the mainland, but
Got
I
it.
haven't talked to him in a while. But
But the silver trade, that's funny.
back in the day, he was an overcaffeinated New Yorker, and but he asked me about that, and what it was this trade that the Hunts ended up trying to corner silver. And I happened to be long during the process, and I happen to be a good trend follower. And by this time, I'm disciplined, and I'm going to stick with the trade no
What was the
matter what.
price? Do you remember at this time?
I have no idea. This
Okay.
is God. This is
This was this is 30,
it's
40 years
got to
ago, right?
be 80s or early
Right. So
90s
40
or
years
something.
ago.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
30 years
It's
ago.
like 3-4 decades ago.
Yeah.
I've killed a lot of brain cells between now and then. So what ends up happening is I I've got multiple contracts and I'm going to hold on to this thing. So it's up. I'm moving my stops when I can. I'm getting rid of the noise. The noise is getting huge because now we got limit days. They're not even trading it. Hunts are buying this thing and it's gapping and it's closing trading.
Stopping. Wow.
Nobody is selling silver. Everybody's buying it. There's an
Wow.
imbalance in the orders and it just closes. It opens and closes
Wow.
instantaneously. There's no trading. So this is back in the day before computers and PCs and on my phone I can pick up and dial into interactive brokers and see tick for tick what my account's doing.
Right.
Back in those days you had to call a commodity broker, so I'm calling the commodity broker all the time and probably pissing him off that I'm bugging him. But my account starts at, I think it was around 130,000 at that point trading futures. And I'm now up in the 400s someplace. This is a huge return, and this is just one trade. And I've got a diversified portfolio, but I really don't because it's just silver and everything else.
Wow.
Silver is driving all the returns
Everything.
up, down. It's catching my attention. I'm very stressed out, but I'm trying to be disciplined. I'm not going to sell out early. I'm not going to take my profits. I'm not going to take a
Really?
partial profit, nothing. And I finally get all the way up to 500,000, and then I come plummeting back when they changed the margins.
Oh my
The
God.
Chicago Mercantile, or who was it? Was it Board of Trade, New York Board of Trade, or whoever had the silver back? It was a Comex, I guess it was.
Sure.
said, okay, well, we're going to go to full margin, or we're going to like triple the margin. And of course, the Hunts were leveraging it, so they didn't have enough money to come up with the cash. So they had to start selling to meet margin calls. That just put a whole.
Oh my gosh.
So now we're going gap limit down every day. And the
Oh my gosh.
500,000 is approaching rapidly the 250,000 that I ended up cashing out with at a huge return. If you think about it, almost
Still
100%.
huge. Yeah.
But holy, it didn't feel like that at the time. It
Could
felt
anything ever
like,
do that
oh my
again?
God, I just lost half my money.
Could you ever
Like,
see a market doing that again?
oh yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, oh, sure they do. I mean, COVID, there was a lot of, well, palladium, for instance, right
Sure.
before palladium was insane. It was every day, new highs, new high, new high, new high, new high, new high,
Interesting.
new high.
Interesting.
So yeah, there's markets that could do that for a while.
In the
Um,
sense, well, I've never heard of the market literally opening and closing for the whole day. That's just because they don't close for the whole day anymore. They just do the 15-minute thing, right?
No, that's the stock market.
So this is
Futures
sort of
markets sometimes can
futures
close
are
down for
different.
the whole day. Yeah,
Got it. So
yeah.
do
Like
you, is it,
hogs, cattle. You could
yeah.
have days where you get a big imbalance, uh, like a virus spreading in the hog crop or something, and all of a sudden everybody's buying it and it's
Oh my
gapping.
gosh.
I think hogs has gapped limit lock limit a few times this last year.
Really
Yeah,
interesting for someone like me. So like I
yeah,
have never traded futures. Where would
yep.
you push me to learn about futures? I have, 5 years experience through Forex now. What would you push towards me to just start to learn about it? I can diversify. I want to diversify. Where
Yeah,
would I go for good?
I would several things. I would hmm, First thing I would point you to is a webinar that I did. There's a recording on our website of using futures in your portfolio. So that's a
Okay.
nice little basic kind of tutorial for about an hour, and there's some good questions there.
Okay.
I would also go to the Chicago Mercantile site,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of education on the math behind it,
Hmm.
and what a contract is, and what a delivery month is, and what a first notice day is, and all these
Got it.
things that you might like to know. And they're obviously, since they're an exchange, want as many people to trade futures as possible, so they're
Sure.
they're incentivized to give a pretty good tutorial.
Right.
And there's both video that you can look at and reading material, so that'd be a
Cool.
good way to go.
Is futures
um,
the main market that you're focused on right now?
I would say, to me, it's the easiest thing I do. I
Yeah.
find trading ETFs take less time for me, but I find them more one-way, risk-oriented, hard to diversify. Think of it this way. If I've got 20 positions in a portfolio,
Hmm.
and let's say one of them happens to be crude oil, and the
Sure.
next one happens to be live cattle,
Okay.
on any one day, those two instruments don't have a heck of a lot to do with each other.
Right.
Crude oil's worried about whether or not Saudi Arabia is doing something or whatever,
Sure.
and live cattle is worried about the temperatures in Nebraska or something.
Right.
There's just different things. By the same token, things like lumber probably doesn't care what the stock market's doing that day or what
Right.
interest rates are. Maybe
Right.
maybe it's tied to housing, so maybe there is some tie. But basically, what I look at futures is something that you can vastly diversify with correlation coefficients that get very close to zero,
Because they're just completely separate.
which means that you have two instruments that have nothing to do with each other, and both of them could go up, both of them could go down, one could go up, the other one could go down,
Separate
vice
data that goes
versa.
into the decision, which
Right.
really gives you true diversification at that point
Which is really, really hard to find in a world where everything's electronic, and
and tied together.
we're up 100
Right.
points on the Dow, and then Hong Kong
Everything's
opens
up.
up 100,
Yep.
and then
Yep.
there's, Europe is up again, and in the,
Everything
London's up,
follows
and then you're
everything.
back to
When
New York, and
Bitcoin goes up, the other cryptos follow it. It's like everything
yeah,
follows everything nowadays. It's very
yeah,
true.
and everything's tied so electronically, so it's really hard to find that true diversification, and I find that I can get it in futures more than any other place right now.
Interesting. When you got into futures, how was the trading actually done? All over the phone?
Yeah, over the
And it was
phone. When I first got started, you have to call the trade in, and then the broker would then send a or he would write up a ticket. It would go to his wire room. The wire room would wire the floor. The floor wire operator would then either signal or write up a ticket. A runner would run it out to the pit. Then the pit guy would hand his trader that was associated with his firm the ticket. Then that guy would have all his tickets and his books and try to figure
Right.
it out
There's
on
the
a pad of
pictures we see with
paper.
the guys with the
And
jackets and
then
the
and then they're
paper.
doing the hand signals and the
Right.
screaming. And then when he was done, he'd mark it up on who he thought did the other side of the trade and write down
Oh
their
man.
initials. Then he would drop that ticket down on the floor, and the runners would crawl underneath the pit and try to pick up their
Oh my
tickets,
God.
take them back to the wire operator, who would wire it back to the brokerage office. Then the broker would then know about it, and then he would call you and say you were filled. And that process many times took half an hour to an hour, depending on how
Oh
busy
man.
everybody was.
So what does it make you think now when you see this stuff where I'm like, I could trade from this iPad?
What it makes me think is there's a heck of a lot less potential for error. Can you imagine with all those people touching it and
Yeah,
pieces of paper
Steve
and
was the
people
one that gave
writing?
it to me, and then he crawls, picks up the wrong one. You're lost. That's
They
crazy.
spent hours and sometimes all night trying to resolve trading disputes
Oh,
between
I'm sure.
firms because no, I sold it to you. No, you didn't.
Oh
I was
man.
buying it from the guy standing next to you, and oh my God, what a mess.
So
And think of the fire hazard with all that paper down underneath the pit. If somebody dropped a
a
cigarette butt or
cigarette or
something,
something.
which
Yeah,
of
that's
course was not
crazy.
allowed,
But
and even
still,
the pits were also made out of wood in some case. I mean,
wow.
this is like a fire trap.
Seriously,
And
like literal fire trap.
yeah, exactly. I never traded on the floor, thank goodness. I went right from engineering right into money management by way of computers. So
Right.
I was always a big advocate of electronic, and I knew that sooner or later electronic, what it's done is just drives the cost. I mean, look at all the people that I
Exactly.
described in the process in the old days.
Yeah.
They've all been eliminated, and it's just a bunch of electrons going through the wire, and it's all
Right.
done.
Right.
And I mean, when I'm day trading like this morning, I had my fills
Like in a
already
second.
confirmed to me on the
Right.
machine in what, 2 seconds, three
Not
seconds
even.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
it's insane.
So I have two more things that I want to ask you before I read something to you, because I have your book here and I want to quote you because it's a really great passage that you wrote here. But for someone like me who has never traded futures before, I see the potential in, of course, trading silver, gold futures. Of course, and you can do gold stocks. Peter Schiff talks
Sure.
about that all the time. Of course, what about the physical gold and silver? Are you a believer in that? Do you think that actually can carry weight as a piece to diversify into, even if it's just a little 3% of your assets, 5% of your assets?
Yeah, I would. Even 3% might be a lot.
Yeah,
I think that people should consider contingency planning for world chaos, world depression, world coming apart at
sure,
the seams.
sure.
I think that's useful to think about, not become obsessed with like some do.
Right.
And I think that my concern over bullion gold is whether or not that becomes a useful thing to have at that time. In other words, if you want to go buy groceries or barter like gold, bullion coins, let's say, for gasoline for your car,
Right.
that's assuming that the gas station attendant is going to take a bullion coin for the gas.
Right.
He may want tissue paper or
And I mean,
like,
if it's the way that I think about it, if it's that bad, I don't think we're going to be worrying about filling up my car and paying for it. You know what I mean? I'm going to be taking
yeah,
the gas that I could take if we get to that point. So I think a lot of people see value in, like, I'll buy the silver today. It's at 20. What is it right now?
21 maybe.
Yeah, 21, 29. So I'll buy it today at 21. It'll go to the high it touched before at 40, and I'll sell it back to the guy I bought it from, minus the premium, of course, because the premiums are
Right,
crazy on the bullion, and I'll
right,
make a little bit of money there. I think
right.
that's how some people do look at it too. I'll sell
Yeah,
it and give it to my kids or whatever. My kids will sell it. You know what I mean? Like jewelry almost is what.
I would rather if you could find like a mini silver contract, or if you had a big enough portfolio just to buy the futures contract, it'd probably be a lot simpler than having to deal with the physical.
Yeah.
I mean, that many ounces of gold, I mean, depending how much money you're
You
talking
would
about,
need safes,
it's
multiple safes,
heavy.
huge
It's
safes.
heavy.
Right.
Yeah, you
Right.
have to
Yeah.
have
It's
huge
very
safes.
heavy.
And then, hey, what happens if somebody comes in at gunpoint and says, "Open your safe"? Then
You're
there's
all
just
the
all
money
sorts
you,
of,
right.
yeah. I don't know. It, you got to be reasonable. You got to spread it around. You got to protect your risks. You got to think through scenarios and be ready for them. But I think you don't want to be obsessed with any one, because you want to be flexible enough to roll with it. Is the
Sure.
way I look at it.
I think that's a great way to look at it. I'm actually, so here I'm looking at your book, chapter 2, the part about understanding yourself. You said when investment, and you actually, I think, said this on Twitter today or the other day, when an investment is as appropriate for an investor, it becomes almost as easy as breathing. A balanced investor understands the overall strategy, does a good job at diversifying and managing the risks, and feels comfortable that the investment suits his or her personality. When did you understand that within your own trading, and how could you tell someone maybe that is struggling to find that sense of breathing, what could they do on their daily basis to maybe just work on that?
I understood it when I got to the point where I had the first clients as a money
Yeah.
manager. And I realized that the questions they were asking me didn't relate to good trading. They related to their own unease with trading
Sure.
and their lack of knowledge, their lack of mental discipline, lack of strategic focus on things rather than like what happened in the Wall Street Journal today or
Right.
something. And that's kind of when I stood back from it all, and on one of my many plane flights, probably, I'm sitting thinking about things, and I'm thinking, all of our clients really need more help in trying to be comfortable than they do with actually managing the money. It's not the managing the money. I feel very comfortable. I'm doing a good job doing that,
Right.
but they still hire and fire me. They still give me money at the top and take money out at the bottom of the drawdown. Um, they make stupid mistakes,
Right.
and unless I help them, they're always going to be making those stupid mistakes. So the reason I wrote that book that you have right there was to give a free copy of it to each client that came in, with the hopes that they would read it, and by them being a better client, they would help me be a better money manager, because
That's
they wouldn't
genius.
be asking me these dumb questions and pulling money out at the wrong time and putting money in at the wrong time. And I had a fund that was a multi-strategy single manager fund, and I literally, when I had a whole bunch of clients leaving, I'd be adding money in, and
Really?
when they were trying to come in, I would be repositioning my money all over the place.
Wow.
I did the opposite of what the clients did. And
Wow.
it's perfectly legal, because it's a
It
partnership.
makes sense though.
I got the same price they did.
Right. It makes
Um,
sense though. It really
but
does.
to me, it modified my risk structures. When I saw the risks getting higher, I would back off, and it would just be an ongoing policy of mine to do it. And when everybody was getting nervous and the risks were lower, we were in a drawdown, everybody's disillusioned all of a sudden. I'm sitting there going, where could I get some extra money? I want to put, funnel money in there. And if you have a strategy and it's mathematical and you know what you're trying to do, it's not that hard to do it.
Right.
But these clients would never have that type of thing. And I had my few really good clients that I could have a conversation with intelligently, and they would understand what I was saying and buy into it. But vast majority, 90% of the people out there
Did you ever have to fire a client?
oh yeah. Oh,
I'm
I've
sure. I'm
fired a
sure.
number.
I'm
Oh
sure.
yeah.
Was all the
And I always felt better after doing that.
oh, I bet, because it was weight on the shoulders, I'm sure. You were thinking about them when you'd wake up in the middle of the night. When you were, two questions, and then I want to get into that word association with
Yeah.
acquiring clients. how did you go about that? Does that go back to the edge of your resources, your connections, and the people that were in your circle already, and you were kind of going to them and they were talking about it
Um,
with their friends and it just kind of grew organically?
yeah, there was a lot of that. At some stages along the way, there's a lot of reporting services where if you're a registered commodity trading advisor, for instance, there'll be people that used to be managed account reports back in the day, and now I think
And they can
is
find
it
you.
Barclays or
Sure,
whoever's doing
sure.
it these days. You send in your numbers. They have a reporting system. You fill out all your profile and your company and your address and telephone number and emails, and then you report to them, and then they mass that into a database so people can screen for managers. So if somebody's screening for a manager in Scottsdale, for instance, they could see that Trendstat Capital was in Scottsdale, and they did X percent last month, and they did X percent last
Got it.
year.
So it was like a directory.
Yeah, and so it'd sort of be like the morning stars of the world.
Sure.
You you get exposure out there, and once people find that you're doing halfway, decent,
You're going to
then there's
talk.
always the Futures magazine wants to call up and Tom, are you available next Wednesday to talk to Tom Hartle to do an interview with him on what you're doing or something, and little
Sure.
by little publicity gets out there. People find out about you. You do a few speeches here and there at conferences and
That's it.
schmooze
It spreads.
people at
You,
cocktail hours, and
exactly.
eventually you end up with more money under
It spreads like the
management.
plague at that
It's
point, right?
highly inefficient.
With my other, as you were talking, I had one question going back to what we said before. Was the Forex trading, because I know a lot of the currency pairs that you were trading, was that done all through the futures market as well?
No,
No, so
we
that was
actually
actually
reached a
outright currency
point.
pairs.
We reached a point at around 110 to 20 million under
Okay.
management in futures, where I
Okay.
could see the handwriting on the wall that I was going to start running out of futures capacity.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, it might not be as much the case today. You got to remember, this is we're
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
talking, early 1990s.
Sure.
We're almost 3 decades ago.
God, that
And
makes me
back
feel
in,
old.
it's probably older than you, right?
I was born in '95. Don't
Yeah,
mention the not.
exactly. Yeah, this would be before you were born. The when you had those types of liquidities and you really got over about 100 million to 200 million,
Yeah.
you'd see CTAs starting to struggle on their performance.
Really?
And a lot of clients, well, it's kind of like Warren Buffett trying to move a
You
stock
just
position.
right. It's hard.
Everybody's watching
Everybody's
you.
looking. Yep.
All the orders are going through the pit. Somebody sees, okay, well, somebody here is selling, you know, 10,000 bond positions. That must be fill in the blank.
Right.
Um, so what happens is you're kind of defeating yourself with your size. And I didn't want to ever get to that point. And clients would ask you the question, what happens if you get to this number? Do you have a
Mm-hmm.
number where you have to close, limit your
Mm-hmm.
access? And most of the legitimate large guys would say, yeah, my number is 150 or my number is 200 or something. I think at that
Sure.
point we're going to close down. And then the typical procedure was every year, at the end of the year, you just give the extra money over that amount back. You just make distributions to the clients.
Mm.
And enviable place to be in, but I could see that I was starting to get close to it. And so we set on and I also noticed at the same time, my futures trading and currencies was, as a collective group, the best group that I had, versus grains, versus meats, versus
Wow.
precious metals.
Okay.
Currencies were very, very profitable. I had some huge gains in yen and back in the day, Deutschmarks. That's to make you feel old again, because Deutschmarks
Don't
disappeared
even.
in
Yeah, they
'97.
don't even circulate anymore. Yep.
And so in those days, there was a lot of big moves, and they were extended moves. I had one yen trade, I remember, went year and a half. I was
Really.
in one trade for a year and a half. It just kept
Wow.
going my direction. Never got stopped out, just coined cash. And so when we got into FX, I thought, all right, this will be easy. Not so easy. It took about a year for me to reprogram all of the futures models so I could deal with things like pips instead of ticks,
Mm-hmm.
and variable tick rates, basically. It's because some of them are not in US dollars, some of them are in
Right.
Japanese yen or
Right.
whatever. So you got to
Right.
learn all that, lingo and all the little wrinkles. The computers did not like that, all those differences. So it took us a
Right.
while to deal with all that. Once we got it going, we exploded, because now my capacity just went to a billion or more.
Right.
Uh, I couldn't even see where the capacity was. It
Was
was
that
so
because
liquid.
at that time, really, correct me if I'm wrong, but Forex in the 90s and 80s, you needed a lot of money to trade Forex. It wasn't like it is
Yep.
now. So was
Oh
that
yeah.
because once you could break into the bubble and you guys were already over the 100, you're already in the game, you had the
Oh,
connections at the broker,
everybody
you could
knew who
make it work.
Trendstat was. I'd
Right.
call it, Chase would, I think Chase Manhattan, well, Merrill Lynch, for instance, gave us 100 million of a fund that they did.
Wow.
So we had one client with 100 million, and we used their trading desk. They were one of the best trading desks we had in the day.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
they did a great job for us. It was a nice symbiotic relationship. And, but you look at that, and they come to you and you have to deliver. And, it's kind of a very healthy relationship in that they have the big money raising capabilities that I don't. I'm a
Right.
10-person firm. They've got,
Right.
thousands and thousands of brokers out there and financial planners across the country and world. And so it makes it easy for me to manage one large block of money. And once I have that, they have no problems. They know who I am. They know
You're
I've
already in
got
the know.
backups. They
Yep.
know I'm in computers.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it's real easy for them to sell the fund to the retail client, because the retail client knows who I am too.
Yep.
Say, Basso's got part of this fund along with John Henry and, Chesapeake and a bunch of others.
Sure.
And off you go.
So what was the reasoning for closing Trendstat?
Oh, it was really simple. The first thing that happened was in '98 or so, the euro came into being, and once that happened, I lost from my 30 pairs down to about 16 or 17 pairs.
Why was that?
So because the euro took out the mark and like
Ah, it
about
took out the other
13
car.
other
Got
currency
it.
pairs. There
Got it.
was
That
no
makes
currency
sense.
pairs.
Oh, that makes sense.
Now
Okay.
there's US dollar euro, US
Got it.
dollar Japan,
Got
and
it.
everything else.
Oh, that must have been
So
cool to trade so many different currency pairs like that. But keep going.
oh,
That's cool.
it was very stable, very profitable. It was great, but that disappeared in '98. So if you go back in history and look at the records, you'll see about $40 billion with a B disappeared from the currency traders, part of the Barclay MAR index, um, part of the industry, because
Sure.
the
Why?
diversification imploded. All the clients were nervous about the lack of diversification.
And they bounced?
So they took off. So
Wow.
my 600 million went down to quickly about 100 million.
Wow.
And I had decided that I would create a multi-strategy single manager fund, which we had called Market Math. And inside Market Math, I was the largest client. That's where I traded all my own money, and right alongside with client money.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a partnership, and we ended up doing 150 appointments with everybody from fund to fund managers to wealthy family offices,
Sure. Sure.
whatever. And you could easily say that I am not the best marketing guy in the world. I've never been known for my marketing prowess, I would
Sure.
say. Uh, I'm good with numbers and computers, probably not marketing. Well, after those 150 appointments, would you believe we added that many dollars? Zero.
Really? Really?
And I said, it's costing me $100,000 a year to keep Trendstat open. It's wasting 60% of my time with government regulations and audits and CPAs and lawyers that have to update the prospectus and all this garbage. And none of that is doing any good for my clients.
Right.
And I don't have the time to research new and better ways of managing money.
Right.
Why am I doing this? There's so many other fun things I could do, and I didn't need the money, so I just gave my clients 3 months notice. I gave my employees 4 months notice, And we gracefully shut that whole thing down, and I helped people move money to other managers.
I'm sure.
If they wanted to talk to me, I was happy to help them move to some place. And I just
Sure.
basically sold all the office furniture and the paintings on the wall and the safe and everything,
That's awesome.
and walked off into.
What did it feel like when you did that? The day you finally sold everything and the day you were off that lease? How did
It
that
was a
feel?
good day. Yeah,
Definitely a good day.
yeah.
A closed chapter.
I never have for a second missed being a money
That's
manager.
awesome. That's very awesome.
Not for a second. I've enjoyed life. I'm a poster child for retirement.
And now you're working on this enjoy the ride. I think we need to get you t-shirts, Tom. That's what we can do. We got to
Hey,
get you got
this has
t-shirts?
got. Do you see this logo right here? Now you got to go down here. Let's see. I got enjoy the
Yeah, there it is.
ride.org
I like
right
it.
here.
Yeah, that's it. So we have a
Yeah.
saying with my group, it's do less, do it better, do it bigger. And I think it's something you can apply to a lot of things. Trade less, trade better, trade bigger, same kind of thing. So we have a little thing. So I think it's cool to see that you have that the tagline.
Well,
So now,
enjoy
yeah.
the ride world was just to put myself out of business a little bit again. So if I can put all my knowledge on a website and people can go in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week and look at books I've written and research papers I've written and listen to when you get done with this interview, I'll get a copy or a link
Yep.
and I'll put it on the website so people that didn't get to see this can find you and listen to a playback. Now they send me a few less at least dumb
It's
questions
less
because
questions. It's more compliments. Thank you for doing this. Thank you
well,
for
yeah,
doing that.
I
Right.
do get a ton of
I'm
compliments from a
sure.
lot of people, and I appreciate them.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
happy that people like what I'm doing, but I think
Just less dumb questions.
the whole ETR thing, I was just trying to come up with a way of putting all my information in one place, like all my
Right.
research papers, all my interviews.
Sure.
It's kind of like Tom Basso's retirement site.
I like it.
And I spend, I might go on the entire week. I might spend, if it's an hour in a typical week on the site, it'd be a lot.
Yeah.
I don't.
So it's good. So it's good that it doesn't take up a lot of time, but yet it
No,
still gets the
and it
job done to
and
bring the
and
value
it
to
pays
answer the
for
questions.
itself.
Yep. So it's
Enough
worth it.
people buy videos and buy books and things that
Yep.
it pays the minimal fees that it takes to keep the website
Absolutely.
operational. So it's all good. Everybody
It's cool
wins.
to see you looking at it that way too. Even after all the success and all the money that you've made, you're still looking at the business of this website as a business. You're like, well, does it cover itself? Does it pay for itself? Okay, good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's very refreshing. I feel like,
I don't want to create a website to help traders all over the world
and then have it cost you.
and then have it cost out of my own pocket.
Right. Right.
That's going a little bit beyond
It goes like crosses the capitalistic line into
yeah,
the
that's no,
philanthropic
that's
and
not going to
charitable
happen.
giving too much, right? No, I'm with you
No, people
100%. So,
should be able to. I mean, my position sizing book, we were wrestling with what are we going to sell this thing for? Because I wrote it while my wife was rehabbing from rotator cuff surgery, and I would bring my laptop along and sit in the physical rehab facility's lobby, and I wrote the book waiting for her to get out of her physical rehabs.
that's
And
awesome.
then all I had to do was to run a couple studies and put in some charts and some tables.
Right.
And I thought, you know, if everybody in the world did what this book asked them to do, it wouldn't be people competing with each other. It would be people stabilizing their returns by whatever individual strategy they have. So let's make this thing as cheap as I feel like comfortable doing it. So $10, how about that?
Right.
And my wife says, I don't know, maybe you should do 15 or 14.95. I said, I don't want an odd number. Let's just make it $10.
$10.
We've sold thousands and
I
thousands of
bet.
copies of this thing electronically.
Yep.
Every month I get like 10 different checks coming in from Amazon
Right.
UK, Amazon
Right.
Netherlands, Amazon
Yep.
Germany, Amazon
Tom, you're with it. You're
Japan.
a digital entrepreneur, Tom. Don't count you out yet.
But the thing is, it's nice is if I sell a $10 book, it's electronic. I might make $9.50 or something. It's
Sure.
not like you get rich over the thing, but a couple of those $9.50 they
Hey, it
end up
adds
paying
up.
for the the 700-800 a month I got to for the hosting the website and
Right.
different
Right.
costs that you do end up having. So
Absolutely.
it's positive cash flow. That's all I care.
That's all that matters. So for everybody that's watching and wants to check it out, it's enjoytheride.world, correct?
Right. And enjoytheride.com was taken. So I
Unfortunately.
thought, well, world is not taken. And that's a legitimate extension.
It
And I
is, and
have
it works well.
trader friends all around the world. This works for me. So it's
It's perfect.
enjoytheride.world.
So we have ASFX.biz. No one
Yeah.
has a .biz. Everybody's .com.net, but they had
Yeah.
my .com, and I wasn't paying however much to whoever
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'll take the .biz. It's cool. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a
It's cool.
business. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, nowadays, people are putting cloud behind it.
I know I've seen that too.
etr.cloud
Yep.
or something like that. There's
Yep.
a lot of cloud-based businesses these days, so that's kind of fun.
So something, and I can't thank you enough, Tom, for the hour and a half, however long I've stolen from you. I really appreciate it. And I'm definitely going to have to buy you a drink or some dinner when we're COVID free and I get out to Arizona for
You're
sure.
on.
So
You're on.
the one thing I want to try to do real quick to wrap us up here. So I've never done this before. I think it'll be cool. Just a little
Okay.
word association. I sent you that list of couple words just to see what's the first thing that pops to your mind. You ready? So I'll read
Sure.
them off to you. If it's a sentence or two, that's okay. But let's,
Okay.
if you give me even a one worder, you can hit me
Yeah.
with that. You ready? So the first one is day trading.
Making money in the noise.
I like that. Wall Street.
An archaic concept where physical buildings actually housed where trading was done, that it's no longer necessary to exist.
Now they're in buildings in New Jersey that are
Yeah, or
guarded and
Long
the windows are
Island, or
blocked out.
yeah,
Right. Exactly.
or in
Politics.
distributive centers all over the world, really.
Exactly. Exactly. Politics is my next word for you.
Divisive.
And noisy.
Yeah.
Financial independence.
Freedom to choose.
I like that. What does freedom mean to you?
It means you being able to make your own decision to affect your own life and your family's lives without somebody else telling you you can't do it.
And I think that's what everybody watching and listening is after. So I think that's a great one to end us on, Mr. Basso. I appreciate it very much. I can't thank you enough. And for everybody listening, make sure you check out the links in the description to the video here. I'm going to put a ton down there so you can get in touch with Tom. You can grab the books. You can grab everything. Make sure you guys check that out. And Tom, maybe if the YouTube community has it, maybe we'll have to do a round two shortly. Maybe you, me, and Steve.
Oh, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. Yeah, I love Steve. I think he's got some great stuff going. So that's also very good. Eric, I saw the Eric interview you did. It was outstanding. I was laughing. I was actually building a flower, kind of a, what was it? Some kind of a flower bed made out of pavers. And I am just breaking out laughing, listening to this in my ear on the phone. When he does his little informal studies, he calls them.
Yeah.
And you have to know Eric to know how humorous those are. But they were so funny because I've
And I
had all
think,
those same experiences.
I'm sure. And maybe going forward, if you have anybody else that could be interesting for me to get on the show, I think that'd be awesome too. But again,
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. I
All
appreciate
right.
it a million times.
All right. No problem, Austin. I enjoyed it.